ema, reka ele murena, kawena reka ema, ratswarana. Waar die wilgers welig spruit, doringboom sy skadu sprei, soos ons groei in kundigheid, mag U ons lei. Sien ons hoe hier lei met die hand, laat U sien rus oor ons land. Three strong streams united flow, Africa stands proud and tall. As we learn, we trust, we know God is in control. Bless us, O Lord, guide us with grace. May Northwest be blessed always. Bless us, O Lord, sien ons hier. Ore Jehovah se morena, sien ons, bless us, O Lord.
I can't see me back there. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Dear ladies and gentlemen, good evening, goeienaand, tapane monate. It is with great pleasure that I would like to welcome you to this special occasion, the inaugural address of Prof. Zandri, Dickason-Koekemoer. I would like to express a warm welcome to Professor Robert Balfour, the Deputy Vice-Chancellor, Teaching and Learning, Professor Bab Surijal, Executive Dean, Prof. Herman van der Merwe, Deputy Dean, Teaching and Learning, Prof. Wynand Grobler, Director, School of Economic Science, Prof. Leandi van den Berg, Research Director, Talit SA, Prof. Steve Dunga, Deputy Director for the School of Economic Science. Welcome to colleagues from the Faculty of Economic and Management Science and colleagues from other faculties of the Northwest University, friends and family, especially Prof. Zandri's husband, Thys Koekemoer, and children, Zian and Lizzie, her father, Mr. Dennis Dickinson, brother, Mr. Romeo Dickinson, and family. Today is a proud and joyful occasion for the Faculty of Economic and Management Science, the Northwest University, and all of us present. Inaugural addresses are an essential component of the university's public events program, helping to create a broader awareness of the latest development in research in the faculty and university. It also provides the platform for a university to showcase its academics, introduce them to the academic and non-academic community of the university, and allow engagement with the public. The inaugural of professors is a special occasion during which newly appointed full professors are inducted into office. It is a significant milestone in any academic's career. It is an opportunity for them to inform colleagues in the university and the public about their research journey and update colleagues on their current and future research directions. It also allows the new professor to answer for herself regarding her position and contributions to a chosen subject field. The Faculty of Economic and Management Science is proud and privileged to have five professors inducted this year. Professor Zandri, you can celebrate a significant personal milestone with family and friends and previous and current colleagues tonight. The inaugural address allows the university to recognize your academic achievements. Ladies and gentlemen, I have also had interesting conversations with Prof. Zandri Dickason-Koekemoer, and she's also part of my team and plays a significant role in the unit where we are working. Today, I'm sure that we are all looking forward to the inaugural, cracking the code, investor behavior and financial decision-making. At this point, I request Prof. Wynand Grobler, Director, School of Economic Science, to introduce Prof. Zandri Dickason-Koekemoer. Thank you.
Thank you. It's indeed an honor for me to introduce Zandri today here. Zandri, we came quite a number of years, and I've witnessed your growth as an academic over the years, so it's an honor for me. Now, Zandri, born in 1987 in Meyerton, is the youngest of a close-knit family with 3 older brothers. From an early age, she displayed discipline and focus, traits that defined her academic journey. In 2011, she married her supportive husband, Thijs, and together they have 2 children, Zian, an inspiring BMX rider, and Lizay, a talented world dance champion, who serves as a constant motivation and anchor. Now, Zandri began her academic career in 2007, completing her first degree with determination and emerging as a standout student. She continued her academic career and by 2011 completed another 2 honors degrees. In 2012, Zandri completed then her master's degree, and in 2016 she decided, well, before I complete my PhD, I'm going to pursue an MBA degree, and she enrolled for the MBA, and she completed that in 2016. She embraced this challenge and emerged victorious, adding another remarkable accomplishment to her list of academic qualifications. Now, her passion for learning led her to enter then the PhD program in 2017, and she obtained that a year later in 2018. Since obtaining her PhD, she has published 65 articles in international accredited journals in the field of risk management, specifically bank risk management, and she was recognized in 2020 as the most productive emerging researcher by the university. In 2023, she also received the National Research Foundation rating, which is quite an achievement. Today, she serves as a research director of the Trade Research Focus Area, and her career stands as an inspiring symbol of what can be achieved through discipline and dedication. It is then an honor for me, Zandri, to call you to the front to deliver your inaugural address.
Right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and all protocol observed. In the dynamic world of finance, understanding investor behavior holds the key to unlocking mysteries of effective decision-making. As financial markets ebb and flow, influenced by a complex interplay of factors, the behavior of investors becomes a critical element to consider. Cracking the code of investor behavior unveils valuable insights into their motivations, behavioral finance biases, risk appetite, and level of risk tolerance when making financial decisions. It enables anticipating market trends, evaluating investment opportunities, and navigating the ever-changing landscape of finance with greater precision. Join me as I will embark on a journey to crack the code of investor behavior, unraveling its mysteries and harnessing its power in the pursuit of successful financial decision-making. Investor behavior is a captivating exploration into the fascinating world of how investors think, act, and feel when making financial decisions. Investor behavior is influenced by various elements, such as risk tolerance, investment goals, past experiences, cognitive biases, market sentiment, and economic factors. Investor behavior encompasses both rational and irrational decision-making processes. Rational decision-making processes is where investors will evaluate all the available information, determine all the possible outcomes, but they will select the option that will maximize utility. Irrational decision-making tends to deviate from the rational decision-making processes, where the influence of emotions, cognitive biases, and social influence comes to play. Elements of investor behavior typically comprise of a risk appetite. In risk management, we have a notion where we have high risk, high return. In other words, if investors tend to invest in more risky investments, they will be offered a higher return. The opposite is also true, where we will have low risk and low return. If investors opt for a more safer investment option, they will be offered a lower return. Emotional biases. Emotional biases typically occurs spontaneously based on the personal feelings of an individual at the time a decision is made. It can typically include fear, greed, and overconfidence. Cognitive biases is when it comes to investing. Cognitive biases can make our investing behavior irrational. This can lead us to make undesirable financial or investment choices because we draw incorrect conclusions based on some of the thinking errors our brain is making to arrive at those decisions. It typically includes the confidence bias. We have the confirmation bias, we have the availability bias, and we have the anchoring bias. When we think of the anchoring bias, it is typically where an investor's decision will be influenced by a certain reference point. Availability bias, it is typically where investors will make a decision based on the readily available information. Then we have the confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is where investors will seek information to confirm their pre-existing beliefs. We have the investment horizon. The investment horizon, some investors will focus on short-term gains and losses, while others will look at long-term accumulation of wealth. Information processing. Investors gather, process, and interpret information differently. It is greatly dependent on the sources they rely on, the level of financial literacy, and then also their ability to analyze and understand complex data. Social influences, typical discussions between friends over a cup of coffee. Social media discussions and perceptions of financial advisors. In the previous slide, I mentioned something about cognitive and emotional biases. Let's quickly recap. Cognitive biases, they are typically the availability bias, confirmation bias, and the anchoring bias, whereas your emotional biases typically includes greed, fear, and overconfidence. So when we take these two concepts and we put them together, we arrive at a concept called behavioral finance biases. Behavioral finance biases can significantly impact investors' decision-making, which leads them to often make irrational and suboptimal investment choices. Some of the typical behavioral finance biases we look in the financial world is the overconfidence bias. Overconfidence bias is where investors are typically overconfident in their ability to predict market predictions, market movements. Herding behavior. The herding behavior is typically where investors will follow the actions of the crowd. Loss aversion is typically where investors will feel the pain of a loss more than the pleasure of gains. Anchoring bias, as mentioned before, is influenced by a specific reference point or initial reference point called, for example, past prices. Confirmation bias, as we recall, is where investors will seek information to confirm their pre-existing beliefs. Availability bias, if we recall it, is where investors will make decisions on readily available information. Gambler's fallacy. Gambler's fallacy is typically where the past outcomes will influence the future of events. Regret aversion is where investors will typically do anything in their power to avoid making decisions that will lead to potential regrets. Mental accounting. Mental accounting is where investors will segregate investment into different mental accounts. Endowment effect. The endowment effect is where investors will place a higher value on their already earned assets, which will make them reluctant to sell at a fair market price. And then lastly, the self-control bias. So this is typically where investors put their short-term needs ahead of their long-term goals. They might have not saved enough for their long-term goals, for example, for retirement, which will lead them to invest in short-term risky assets to generate income. Financial decision-making refers to the process of evaluating, selecting, and executing financial choices or actions. It involves analyzing various financial factors, risks, and opportunities to make informed decisions that align with an individual or organization's objectives and constraints. Financial decision-making encompasses a wide range of activities, just to name a few. Budgeting and financial planning. This is typically where we will set our financial goals and create a budget. Investment decisions is where we will evaluate investment options and selecting those that can offer the best potential returns. Financing decisions, determining the most appropriate sources of funds to finance activities and projects. Risk management is where we will identify and assess financial risks, for example, interest rate risk and credit rate risk. Capital budgeting, evaluating investment projects or capital expenditures to determine the feasibility and profitability. Working capital management, managing short-term assets and liabilities to ensure adequate cash flow. Financial analysis, conducting financial analysis through, for example, ratio analysis. Mergers and acquisitions, assessing the financial viability and potential synergies of mergers and acquisitions. Tax planning, considering tax implications and optimize tax strategies in order to minimize our tax liabilities. Then, lastly, estate planning. Develop strategies to manage and distribute assets in a manner that is consistent with our personal goals. Investor behavior plays a significant role in shaping financial decision-making. Understanding how investors think, feel, and act is crucial for individuals and institutions involved in making investment choices. Here are some of the key ways in which investor behavior is being influenced by financial decision-making. First, we have market volatility. Market volatility is typically where investors collectively exhibit fear and panic, which can lead to sell-offs and market downturns. Also, the opposite is true, where investors collectively exhibit optimism and enthusiasm. This can result in them buying frenzies and market booms. Market volatility is typically driven by the herding behavior. The herding behavior is where we said that the investors will follow the actions of the crowd. Risk appetite, we've touched on. We said, depending on the level of risk investors willing to tolerate, that will have an influence on the investment choice. Emotional biases, we've touched on. We said it can typically be influenced by greed, fear, or overconfidence. Long-term versus short-term thinking. Some investors are focused on short-term gains and losses, which leads them to impulsive decision-making and hinder investments to make sound long-term choices. Information processing, we've touched on this. Investor behavior is influenced by the information available and how the information is being processed. Typically, news, social media discussions, and also advice from our friends. Key findings from my research. I mainly focus on the risk tolerance levels and behavioral finance biases of investors in South Africa. My main aim was to see if there is any link between the level of risk an investor is willing to take on, and then also if they're going to be subject towards a specific behavioral finance bias. Thus, I created a model and managed to establish a link between levels of risk tolerance and behavioral finance biases. As time passed, my research focus evolved. One particular area that captivated my attention was establishing a link between the risk tolerance levels, investor personalities, and also behavioral finance biases. The output of the model will look something like this as displayed in this table. You will have one column, which is the risk tolerance level. Then you will have a middle column with investor personality, and then the last column on your right-hand side will be behavioral finance biases. So if we look at this table, for example, let's look at regret aversion, which is in the 4th line. Investors with a medium risk tolerance level will typically display a moderate investor personality and are most likely to be subject towards the regret aversion bias. Remember what we said with the regret aversion bias is where investors will do anything possible to avoid making decisions for potential regrets. If we look at the moderate to growth investor personality type, we see that we have medium risk tolerance levels. We have investor personalities of moderate to growth. The typical behavioral finance biases that these investors might be subject towards will be the representative bias, overconfidence bias, gambler's fallacy, and the availability bias. If we look at the high risk tolerance level, the investor personality we will have or encounter is aggressive investor personality. And the typical behavioral finance bias that these investors would be subject towards is the self-control bias. Remember, these investors didn't make provision for their long-term goals, so they have to invest in short-term risky assets to generate income, which makes sense. So if we display this graphically, this is what it will look like. On the one side, we will have our risk tolerance level. On the other side, we will have our investor personality. You will see that we have an upward slope. In other words, the higher the risk tolerance level, the more aggressive the investor personality. And on this graph, you will see the behavioral finance biases that we will encounter when we link the risk tolerance level with the investor personality. Notably, a structural equation model of financial risk tolerance in South Africa was developed. The research brought to light various factors influencing the risk tolerance, such as demographics, life satisfaction, and financial well-being. I thought it would be interesting to share with you some of the results that I encountered through the years of my research. African female investors between the age of 35 to 49 years who are not married and have a high financial well-being are willing to invest in high-risk portfolios as they indicated high-risk tolerance levels. Investors who perceived themselves to have high financial well-being were more likely to have a high life satisfaction. Male investors are typically subject towards anchoring, overconfidence, and loss aversion bias, while female investors are typically subject towards anchoring, self-control, and regret aversion bias. Male investors who have never been married are more risk tolerant than married or no longer married male investors. Female investors are deemed less risk tolerant compared to male investors. Married investors displayed a positive life satisfaction compared to never married investors and no longer married investors. All right, so my future research on investor behavior and financial decision making holds the potential to shed further light on the complex interplay between psychological factors and economic choices. Delving deeper into this realm can yield insights that help us better understand and predict how individuals make financial decisions. Several promising areas for future investigation includes neuroeconomic approaches, typically where we will apply neuroscientific techniques to study the brain activity when making financial decisions to gather a more comprehensive understanding. Behavioral finance biases in emerging technologies, how behavioral finance biases manifest in new contexts, such as robo-advisors and cryptocurrency trading platforms. Interventions and decision support. Developing and testing interventions that target specific biases can provide practical solutions to improve decision-making. Behavioral finance biases and sustainable investing. Analyzing how behavioral finance biases affect sustainable and ethical investment decisions can contribute to understanding the motivations and obstacles investors face when aligning financial goals. Okay. Data-driven approaches, utilizing advanced data analytics and machine learning techniques that can unveil patterns and relationships in vast data sets, potentially revealing novel behavioral insights and decision-making trends. Throughout my research journey, these findings have deepened my understanding of investor behavior and influenced financial investment companies' approach to client profiling and decision-making. My research journey is far from over, and I'm excited to continue unraveling the enigma of investor behavior to foster a brighter and more prosperous financial landscape for all. Thank you. And then I would just like to make a few acknowledgments. This is the fun part. I can start breathing again. I would like to start off with my dad, Dennis Dickason, that is here tonight. Thank you for that. You've always provided the necessary means for my dreams to come true. Then I have my brother here, Romeo Dickason. I'm always his little sister. He was the one that gave me actually a credit card that was linked to his personal account while I was a student. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for always looking out for me. Then I have, of course, my husband, Dickason-Koekemoer, and my two children, Zian and Koekemoer. Thank you for always all your support, understanding, patience, lots of patience with me. And, Thijs was the one that had to take the kiddies to kiddies parties on weekends for me just to do a little bit more research. And he was the one that sat with me until 2 and 3 in the morning, trying to figure out models and what's going on here in this research world. So thank you so much, Thijs, for all the sacrifices. Then I'm going to Prof. Wynand. Prof. Wynand has been my director for years. He knows me inside out. He knows me too well. He was the one that appointed me as a lecturer in his school, but he did not only value me as a lecturer, but also as a researcher. And, he was the one that had to listen to all my crazy ideas. And he had to clean up the mess behind me a few times. So, Prof, I'm grateful. Thank you for everything. And then Prof. Ines. Prof. Ines, I'm very fortunate to have you here tonight. He was one of my lecturers while I was doing my MBA. And over an informal discussion one day, he introduced to me a concept called behavioral finance biases. Little did I know that on that day, he actually introduced my niche research area to me. I'm forever grateful. Thank you, Prof. Yes. And then I had a student, oh boy, and was she cheeky. She gave me one hell of a time in class. But I saw some great potential. I introduced her to my research world. And today she's a well-established researcher herself, Prof. Zandri. It's been an honor working with you. We've co-authored over 40 articles together. We do postgraduate supervision together. And we're in the same research field. And thank you for always pushing me to my limits when it comes to research. And then I've got Esme. Esme, she's hiding there. I promised her that I will say thank you. She forced me, actually. No, I'm just joking. Esme, thank you for all your support throughout the promotion process. I mean, you play such a tremendous role. And all your patience and, the guidance is really appreciated. And thank you for everything for tonight. It looks absolutely beautiful. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And then we have Lowell and Marlies. As you all know, they're my support team. They support the entire research team. But most importantly, they keep me standing. Thank you so much for everything that you guys do. You know that I appreciate you so much. And also, you guys force me to make time for research. And I really appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you so much. And then last but not least is my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. All glory and honor goes to him. Thank you. I'm done now. I'm done. Thank you, Prof. Okay. I'll stay with
you. Okay. So I think we should recognize this evening the importance of this particular moment. The significance, I think, Prof. Zandri, comes much later in life, actually, when you look back on an evening like tonight and you realize how very, very touching the moment is and how it signifies a particular rite of passage. And you yourself have acknowledged, in fact, in your thanks, that a whole community give rise to this achievement in you. And so I do want to recognize the importance of the faculty as a community of scholars without whom the professorial journey would not be possible. So Prof. Babs, our colleagues, the deputy deans, directors, managers, all, as well as peers in the faculty, thank you so much for supporting our colleague, Prof. Zandri. Thank you also to the family and friends gathered here. I don't underestimate for one moment how critical it is for a professor to have a support team that goes also beyond the academic environment, that look after you outside of the space and the working hours, that support all your ambitions and are there when the dreams sometimes don't come true and you have to be nurtured and encouraged, as we all in fact do in this life. So in congratulating you, Prof. Zandri, we want also to say it is a special night, but of course it's also a recognition of what's to come. That it's not an end point in a journey, but rather actually the midpoint in a journey. And I will always remember my own supervisor saying to me, remember, a doctorate is only the minimum qualification. You need to do research, the minimum. And becoming a professor is also that step along a much fuller journey that we hope will benefit many postgraduate students, many more students, many postdoctoral students who will look to you and your example to us as a university and want to be inspired and follow you. So on behalf of our Vice-Chancellor, Professor Bismarck Thiebecker, our management of the Northwest University, and everybody gathered here, we have a certificate and a gift to hand over to you. It's purely coincidental, I have to say, that we both wore green this evening. And I said to Prof. Zandri, all I'm missing are the shoes. And then we would be a couple, coordinated. But levity aside, let us present the certificate and enjoy the rest of the evening together. We will stand to sing the national anthem at the closing of our ceremony. And I then want to ask that as we process out, Prof. Zandri, you lead us out of the room. And then we'll have an opportunity for everyone to congratulate Zandri personally. There'll be some photos and so on, and then the evening is young still to enjoy. So if I could have the certificate and the gift, okay.